Alright, hi everyone, I'm Brittany and I'm here today to give you my presentation about Bollywood and kind of just give you an overview and teach you a little bit more about Bollywood. Just to point out something, Bollywood, like the image you're seeing right now is kind of just commonly what you'll see in Bollywood productions. You're going to see a lot of glitz and glamour and, just musical numbers, and they're really known for that. So let's start with an overview. For those of you who don't know, Bollywood is the name given to the Indian film industry, which was originally located in Bombay, India, which is now known as Mumbai, India, and that's where the name Bollywood comes from. It comes from Bombay, Bollywood, kind of compared to the American film industry, which is Hollywood. But, with being Mumbai, Mollywood just didn't kind of roll off the tongue as well as Bollywood does. A lot of people don't know that Hollywood is not actually the film capital of the world. Bollywood is, and Bollywood produces a lot more films than Hollywood does each year. Bollywood actually produces around 500 films or so per year. And it musters kind of a bigger audience per year than Hollywood does too. Hollywood only musters around a audience of 6.2 billion a year, compared to Bollywood, which worldwide gets an audience of around 3 billion per year. Despite the language barrier, Bollywood movies are among the highest grossing films in the UK, the Middle East, and Central America. In this presentation, we will cover the influences, the worldwide popularity, very popular acclaimed star Shah Rukh Khan, and the influential films that have just taken over this country and this industry, and we will compare Bollywood to Hollywood. So, with that being said, let's go into the influence. I'm really sorry if I keep messing up in this presentation. This whole recording thing is kind of awkward. So, let's start with the influences. For starters, a lot of the influences that you're going to find in Bollywood are based on the high moral values in India. Just basically, you're going to find, like, when we later on we go and compare Bollywood to Hollywood, you're going to find a lot less explicit material, including like sex and just violence and other things. You're going to find a lot less of that, just to go around with their morals. One of the things that you're going to see a lot of is a lot of musical productions. There are around 6 or 7 musical productions in every Bollywood production, and Bollywood productions are a lot longer too, so they're going to be like twice the time of an American production, or really just any other movie in general. And those are things you're going to see. A few things we're going to point out is a lot of things that you're going to see in Bollywood productions are coming from the phrase, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, masala, and it's just a Hindi word for mixed spice, and it's used to describe the traditional Bollywood kind of mix of action, comedy, romance, song, and dance. These films are made with for the enjoyment of young, old, male, rich, poor, and just to kind of stick with their strict moral values. So you're kind of encompassing a little bit of everyone would like, and you're also combining the values. So you've got a broad market and just audience there. They market, like I said, they market to the whole crowd as opposed to like Hollywood, which we'll get into later, which only markets to mainly 18 to 45-year-old demographic. There is a lot of sequence, that's kind of a big thing. That's really just kind of big in their culture in general, just to make this really exaggerate. Okay, a lot of examples of or influence of where their storylines come from. You're going to see examples of the influence include the techniques of a side story, backstory, and a story within a story, and you're going to find that in most Bollywood productions, which is what makes them so long, is because their plots and their storylines are so exaggerate. Indian popular films often have plots which brand off into subplots. And an example of this where you can see in the 1993 film Kanalika Gardish, which I'm going to type that in the notes here because I am not pronouncing that right at all. So I'll type that in the notes for you real fast. And you can kind of check this movie out and you're going to see just the different plots and just different storylines and all the different things they go into. This is a 1993 film, and I'm going to type that in for you right now. Another thing which they go into, and you're going to find an influence in Bollywood productions, are just ancient Sanskrit drama, which it is, it's just basically a highly styled nature and emphasis on spectacle, where music and dance and gestures are just combined to create a very vibrant artistic piece. Sanskrit dramas were, first known as Natya, and they're derived from the Greek from the root word for dance in India. And the characteristics that you're going to see from these are just a lot of spectacular dance. You're going to also see the theory of rasa, which dates back to the ancient Sanskrit drama, is believed to be, one of the most fundamental features that differentiates India's cinema, particularly from Hindi cinema, from just basically the Western world and what you would see in our culture. So dance is a big deal with them. A lot of things you're going to see are also just the traditional folk theater of India. And traditional folk theater of India, just a little overview, became popular around the 10th century with the decline of Sanskrit theater. The regional traditions include just the Yatra Bengal, which is kind of just, I'm pronouncing these wrong, you'll have to just go a little bit more detail in that. One thing that you will see a lot of in their productions are something they pride are just kind of like the Parsi theater, which is just a blended idea of realism and fantasy and music and dance, earthly dialogue, intelligence into just dramatic discourse of melodrama. They are really big on their melodramas, and that takes over a lot of idea, plot, and story writing for them. They also, just more recently, up into the 2000s, had more Western influence, and particularly they kind of find more influence in productions they see on MTV. And an example of this, which you should probably check out, would be Ratnam's Bombay in its 1995 film, and you're going to find the Western influence there. One thing I want to point out with the plots, though, Bollywood films are more heavily influenced, although they're diverse, but more heavily influenced in romance and love stories. And it's kind of the strongest theme that you'll see running through a film. It, it almost always draws a crowd, and it's something that, U.S. directors and producers like James Cameron are, really a fan of, and they kind of have said that they'd like to take some influences from Bollywood in their romance department to add to that. To go into kind of their high moral standards and what they believe. A fun fact, the cinematograph of 1952 offered more principles for guidelines in certifying their films. So basically, they kind of follow that to just get away from just decency or morality issues in their productions. And if it doesn't pass, the cinematographic act, they would not be giving a certificate to air their film, and they just the film couldn't exist without them getting the certificate from this company. And that's kind of their form of censorship, they can't exist without it, and that just shows how morals play a big part in their production. So a lot of unaired or unreleased stuff just because they don't fit their moral standards. For a lot of things, okay, so just sticking with our high morals, anything that kind of just, acts of sex or just other just violence and things like that, they use just fancy editing, or they'll use symbolic just themes to kind of really knock those out of the way or kind of distract you or allude to, hey, this is actually happening, but you're not going to actually see it on screen. So you'll see just like cuts to flowers in the wind just to simulate, hey, this is happening. That's just one thing that happens. So now that we know a little bit about their influence, let's go talk about their popularity worldwide. And basically, Bollywood films have recently inspired a lot of U.S. productions, and the main one that it has inspired is Moulin Rouge. So if you've ever seen Moulin Rouge, kind of takes a hit a lot of like just exuberant, just bright colors, music everywhere. You have your melodrama, your storyline. It's not as long as a Bollywood production, but it kind of takes that, and the movies that I have listed here are just other other movies that have just really taken kind of a cue from Bollywood and been inspired from it. As you can see, these are just about all musicals, because that's just music and is a big part of the culture over in India involving Bollywood. Bollywood is really popular in Afghanistan, and a number of Bollywood movies were filmed in Afghanistan, while some dealt with the country. And there's a bunch of movies that I will include in kind of like a footnote that you can check out if you want to see an influence of Afghanistan movies. The popularity of why Bollywood movies are so kind of popular in Afghanistan is that they kind of follow the same moral beliefs that Afghanistan has, so they don't really have to go into much censorship, and they can kind of play it in just so people will understand where it's coming from and why they feel it's appropriate. Okay, so now we want to talk about kind of like the popularity of Bollywood in Russia. So back in the Soviet Union days, when Russia was known as the Soviet Union, a lot of just movies and productions from the United States were banned from production, and so one that they were ones that they, sorry about that, just had a technical issue for a second. One of the things that they were allowed to, and they had a lot of access through just based on just, who they were and just kind of allied with, and for financial reasons, were Bollywood films. So that's where, like, you're going to see a big fan base in Russia for Bollywood films, just because of their kind of ban on U.S. films during World War II and what they could have access to, which was Bollywood. In recent years, Bollywood has experienced a high marked growth in revenue in Canada and the United States, and that just kind of started recently. As of last year, Bollywood films in the U.S. and Canada made around $100 million, and that's a pretty good chunk of change considering that it is from a different culture that's kind of completely different than what you'll see in Canada and the U.S. One of the cool things that you can point out or see is that a lot of artists from other countries have kind of used Bollywood influences in their music as well. So if you have heard of the English artist MIA, who's from London, her song Jimmy 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 Jay is inspired by the Bollywood film Disco Dancer, and it's really popular, and it's got just the Bollywood aspect of it. It's really popular on YouTube, and that's where that takes a lot of its influence from. Now we can let's talk about one of their famous actors, and just he's kind of, when we get to him, He's kind of the equivalent of, I would say, what is his name? Ryan Gosling today in the U.S. and Brad Pitt. So he kind of just has a little bit of everything, and he's their version, Bollywood's biggest star, and he's their version of Ryan Gosling and kind of Brad Pitt together. As you can see right here, I found a cute little meme online that just kind of describes how people feel about him. He's saying, "Oh my God, Shah Rukh Khan." I thought that was really funny and just kind of describes, how their fans feel about him and how fangirls feel about him. He's known as the King of Romance, and he's appeared in more than 500 Bollywood films, which, him being the King of Romance, he actually has it in his contract now because of the decency and just the moral values that he says, although he's the King of Romance, to never kiss the heroine. So never kiss the co-star, and he doesn't do that in his films, and he thinks it's a big deal, and that's part of his success, is that just producers over there feel that he really kind of has their morals, and it has really helped with his fan base, because girls seem to be more interested in him, knowing that they can't have him on screen, I guess. But yeah, he's considered their King of Romance, and I think that's just interesting to learn about him. One of the things that, comparing him to kind of like Brad Pitt over here, is that he's a big philanthropist, and he's just been involved, and he's started so many charities, involved in so many of them. He just has done a lot of that. He's worked at the National AIDS Control Organization, and he's a board of director at Make-A-Wish Foundation in India. He has been, quote, he keeps a low profile for kind of, his charity work, because he feels that he got this kind of from the Quran, which is a book from his religion, kind of their whatever version of the Bible, if you go into that. Just kind of, if you're doing charity for a reason, you're not doing it for the right reason, and he kind of feels that way. Getting there, and that's just kind of who he is, and he's a big star in Bollywood productions. Now we're going to kind of go into some popular movies that you're going to see in Bollywood, and when just doing my research, I found that the most influential movie from Bollywood was Lagan, which was produced in 2001, and some arguably say it's the most iconic. And Lagan, the name from the title of the movie, actually comes from the meaning of just land tax, and it's a really cool piece that just kind of just shows struggles of just society and politics, and just kind of what's going on in India with just taxing of land and other issues like that. The film is set in the Victorian period, in one of India's colonial British Raj. The story revolves around a small village whose inhabitants, oppressed by high taxes, find themselves in an extraordinary situation as an arrogant officer challenged them to a game of cricket as a wager to avoid taxes. The narrative spins around the situation that the villagers face the task of learning the alien game and playing for a result that will change their village destiny. So, if that's a movie that you'd be interested in seeing, it kind of just goes into the struggles that they see in their country, which is interesting. It's number 55 in Time Magazine's most influential movies in the world. And that kind of brings us to our next movie, which is more recent. But this is Slumdog Millionaire has just, according to Rolling Stone magazine, is just the most successful crossover movie from Bollywood to other cultures. It's really just, it's kind of a mix-up because it is a British production, but it's also, Bollywood takes claim over it, and just because it was filmed in India and things like that. Slumdog Millionaire was widely acclaimed, being praised for, its plot, its soundtrack, and its directing. And fun fact, it was nominated for 10 Academy Awards in 2009, and it won 8 of those. And the last film we're going to talk about is Mother India, which was produced in 1957. and it's the story of a poverty-stricken woman named Radha Nargis who, in the absence of her husband, struggles to raise her sons and survives a cunning moneylender amidst troubles. Despite her hardships, she sets a goddess-like moral example of an ideal Indian woman. And this film is very popular over there just because of, and what we're going to talk about later on when we compare, Bollywood to Hollywood. It just, you're seeing a strong Indian woman take charge and be kind of like our Angelina Jolie, but only she's older, and she's not your stereotypical 22-year-old Hollywood starlet. She is, mid-30s, almost 40s, and she's older, and you don't see that going on in a lot of U.S. films. So that's really cool, and I think that kind of just showing that struggle is what makes it so popular in that area, or in Bollywood. So now we are going to talk about, we're going to compare Hollywood to Bollywood. And just as we've talked about earlier, Bollywood features less sexual and explicit content than Hollywood. And Bollywood, I think this is so cool, like we just talked about, provides more leading roles for older adult women in their productions. Bollywood isn't up to, they don't like the idea of upsetting the sensibilities of their loyal audience. Most Bollywood directors shy away from racy sex scenes, French kissing. Instead, they are the masters of just suggestion, and they kind of use just like lingering glances and just like things like that, and just suggestive dance moves in their dance number sequences just to suggest that, something of that nature is happening. Just I think it's really cool in a world where like Kate Winslet and Nicole Kidman are considered old in our culture. They're considered valued. Someone of their age and their like wisdom is considered valued over there. Besides the obligatory attractive young heroine, there are always complex and interesting parts for older actresses to play. So that's really cool. Okay, so basically Hollywood musicals were popular from the 1990s to 1950s through Indian filmmakers, or just not in Hollywood filmmakers. Like those were popular then, when they kind of died out now, and you're only going to see those more in Broadway settings. But those are just basically what Bollywood is, and it's awesome to see that. Sorry, I'm losing my notes. And that's a lot of things that you're going to see that. With India being the biggest producer of films, around 1,000 last year, which is, twice that of America, it's just its censor board, aka the Central Board of Film Certification, it has its work cut out for them. It watches and certifies every film, both Indian and non-Indian, before they can be shown to the country's masses. So basically, we can kind of air whatever we want in the U.S. and kind of just put like PG-13 rating on it, but they have to have it approved by this board before it can even air. It doesn't even matter what rating they put on it; it has to be approved by this board. We look on to our next slide. You can kind of just see a lot of differences from Bollywood to Hollywood. I think just looking at the number of films produced in the is a big difference. 500 and 1,200 is a big difference. And although Hollywood is the highest grossing, third is Bollywood, and that's a pretty big amount. The plots are deeper in Bollywood, and as you can see, you can kind of just take a second to look at this and see one of the biggest differences is that the lengths of the movies are longer, and they're just like 2 to 3 hours, and that's a lot longer than a regular movie. Most of us can't sit through that. The music in Hollywood movies, they're more background music, more just to get you an idea of what's going on, as to where Bollywood is more musical dance numbers, and that's mainly what they composed of. And that's a little bit more about Bollywood that you didn't know. A lot. I'm gonna make a bank, or not a bank, but I'm gonna make a post under that just has a few films that you can check out on Netflix that were listed on this presentation, and you can kind of see them. Just give it a taste for yourself. I know it's not gonna be everybody's cup of tea, especially over here, just because of all the musical productions. But check it out. Thanks for listening. Bye.